Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is great to be here. I'm so appreciative to have so many advocates present to talk about expanding voter access. But in addition to advocates, I'm thrilled that we have Philadelphia City Commissioner, back where I vote and live, Lisa Dealey. Thank you for joining us. In addition, I'm going to go from left to right, so bear with me. We just broke from the floor, so a lot of my colleagues are either in committee or in different meetings, but we have some that were able to take time to be here at the start of this press conference. We have Representatives Carol Kazim, Ronnie Green, Ed Nielsen, Mike Schlossberg, who's our caucus chair, Darisha Parker, Anthony Bellman, Joe Hohenstein, Johanny Cepeda Freitas, Gina Curry, Danilo Burgos, and Morgan Cephas. I'm appreciative to every colleague who may come in and out during this time while we're here talking about expanding access. Last week in Philadelphia Inquirer, there was an editorial written to talk about making sure that there should be opportunities for us to turn out the vote, and it called on elected officials and named me, saying that there needs to be more done to increase registration, but most importantly, participation. I could not agree with that article more. It's time that Pennsylvania joins nearly 24 other states, along with the District of Columbia, to make it easier for voters to participate in elections. Having early in-person voting along with same-day voter registration on Election Day will empower our neighbors in every part of the Commonwealth to participate in each and every election. The bill that we're here to talk about today would allow every single person who's already registered to vote in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to participate in official early voting. It would be for 2 weeks leading up to the election day, whether the primary election or whether the general election. In addition, it would allow every Pennsylvanian who's able to register to vote to be able to go to their polling place on election day and register. These two critical modernizations will make it more convenient for busy, hardworking people who are juggling so many responsibilities and priorities to participate in voting, to cast their vote in person. And ultimately, these measures will make sure that all Pennsylvanians are able to participate in voting. Right now, that 2/3 of Pennsylvania voters from across the political spectrum are in favor of instituting these measures to make voting more convenient. Plus, they've already been adopted in so many other states, including states like Florida and Georgia. In Georgia, we know after the 2020 election, laws were changed, and it's now illegal to give a bottle of water to someone who's waiting to vote. Regardless of your thoughts on that and that law that changed, you can in Georgia, however, have early voting. You can participate in that. And in Florida, right now, people can participate in early voting for 10 days leading up to Election Day. And these types of measurements that would allow and elevate the franchise we see here in Pennsylvania is keeping too many people behind. Same-day voter registration would make it possible for eligible Pennsylvanians to register when it's most relevant, convenient, and sometimes when they remember it's important decisions being made that day, Election Day. It enables real-time corrections. Sometimes we have inaccurate voter rolls, and it adds to the safety and security of every election. As I said, there are 24 states and the District of Columbia that allow every qualified person to register to vote on Election Day and cast their ballot on that same day. When we think about early in-person voting, there's so many voters that although we have a robust mail-in ballot program here in Pennsylvania, so many voters prefer to vote in person. And allowing 2 weeks of early in-person voting will change the game, especially as it relates to what I call our wisest neighbors, our senior citizens who might need a little bit more time or need some support in getting to the polling place, out of the polling place, need to accommodate a the schedule, need to work around their caregiver's schedule. It would also help folks who are needing mobility assistance, perhaps in wheelchairs or walkers. They'll have plenty of time to accommodate their needs without thinking, I'm holding up democracy because I'm at my polling place and it's taking me too long to get inside, or it's not wheelchair accessible, or whatever it might be. There are 2/3 of all states that already have across the nation some form of early voting. It is time for Pennsylvania to join in with those groups. While there's so many in this critical hour that want to continue to sow distrust in our free and fair elections, that want to continue to delegitimize our elections and demonize election workers, it's more important now than ever to restore trust and to take meaningful steps to strengthen our system. These are common sense measures that build on very important voting reforms that we've seen here in the Pennsylvania Commonwealth in the past decade, like mail-in voting. This also will complement the initiatives that our Governor Josh Shapiro and Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis and their administration have rolled out. They've already started automatic voter registration, which is very important. When someone's getting a driver's license or an identification card, they're registering immediately. And these things help to strengthen the turnout. They also redesigned mail-in ballots so that it's much easier for people to use. And we have to recognize we are in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is the birthplace of democracy and our nation. So we've got to do better. We want to make sure that it's convenient for people to vote safely. We want to reduce the time that they wait in line to cast their ballots. And we want to guarantee that every single person is able to speak up and allow their voice to be heard. And we need our democracy strengthened by making sure every voice across our Commonwealth is heard and they're able to participate in every election. You are going to hear from some advocates that have gathered today to talk about this bill and how it would really help to expand voter turnout. And with that, I'm going to turn it over because I do believe she's here now. And we've been joined by Representatives Lisa Borowski, Tina Davis, our caucus secretary, and Stephen Kinsey. Angela Madera, are you here now? Bienvenidos. Welcome. Please come on up here with translator Diana Robinson. And after Angela, we're going to hear from Jennifer Garman. And Jennifer will be introducing Shalua from Pennsylvania Voice. Gracias.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Ángela Madera. Soy miembro de Make the Road, Pensilvania. He sido residente del condado de Lehigh durante 16 años. Me naturalicé como ciudadana estadounidense en 2007. En ese momento creía que automáticamente estaba registrada para votar. Luego supe que estaba equivocada. Registrarme para votar era importante para mí porque planeaba vivir en los Estados Unidos a largo plazo y quería ser un participante activo en su democracia. Y esta fue una manera para mí de hacer escuchar mi voz. Estoy aquí hoy para compartir mi apoyo al registro de votantes el mismo día y a votación anticipada en personas. Yo voto, quiero votar, creo que es mi deber cívico votar, pero cuando la vida se vuelve desafiante, también lo puede ser la votación. Hay tantas personas como yo que tenemos que superar barreras simplemente para emitir nuestro voto. No debería ser así. Votar es nuestro derecho. Los habitantes de Pensilvania están más ocupados que nunca. Los horarios de trabajo y los compromisos familiares varían. Nuestro sistema de votación debe adaptarse a nuestras nuevas realidades y reflejar las necesidades de los ciudadanos de hoy. Estoy muy agradecida por la portavoz de la Cámara de Representantes Estatal, Joanna McClinton, por defender a votantes como yo. Gracias.
Gracias, Angela. Thank you to Angela, a Make the Road PA member, Diana Robinson, Co-Deputy Director of Make the Road Pennsylvania. And I'm going to read Angela's statement. Good afternoon. My name is Angela Madera. I am a Make the Road PA member, and I have been a Lehigh County resident for 16 years. I became a naturalized citizen, a U.S. citizen in 2007. At that time, I believed that you automatically were registered to vote. I later learned I was wrong. Registering to vote was important to me because I was planning on living in the U.S. long-term and wanted to be an active participant in its democracy. And this was a way for me to have a voice, to have my voice heard. I'm here today to share my support for same-day voter registration and early in-person voting. I vote. I want to vote. I believe it's my civic duty to vote. But when life becomes challenging, so can voting. There are so many people like me who have to overcome barriers simply to cast our ballot. It shouldn't be that way. Voting is our right. Pennsylvanians are busier than ever. Work schedules and family commitments vary. Our voting system needs to accommodate these new realities and reflect the needs of today's citizens. I'm so grateful to Speaker McClinton for standing up for voters like me. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Jennifer.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Garman. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Disability Rights Pennsylvania. Voting is one of our nation's most fundamental rights and a hallmark of our democracy. Yet we continue to struggle to ensure that individuals with disabilities are able to participate equitably in a fully accessible voting system. Disability Rights Pennsylvania supports the changes included in Speaker McClinton's voting legislation, including early voting and same-day voter registration. These changes are welcome expansions of voting access in Pennsylvania, and individuals with disabilities will especially benefit from more flexible opportunities to vote. Any voter who wants to vote at their local polling place should be able to do so. Even though federal law requires polling places to be accessible, voters with disabilities still encounter barriers to voting. For many voters with disabilities, it can be a challenge just to get to a polling place due to a lack of transportation. Pennsylvanians with disabilities encounter transportation difficulties every day. These difficulties include things like a lack of access to wheelchair-accessible vehicles, trips that must be planned far in advance, sidewalks that lack curb cuts, and numerous other barriers. These transportation difficulties do not disappear on Election Day. Allowing early in-person voting is critical to expanding in-person access for voters with disabilities. It allows people time to plan if they face a transportation barrier and gives them options to return to their polling place if there are long lines when they come to their polling location. We know that all voters, including voters with disabilities, get more interested in elections closer to the election. Allowing same-day voter registration will ensure that all interested eligible voters can vote in elections. This policy works in other states, and we look forward to it being implemented here in Pennsylvania. We appreciate the work of Speaker McClinton to continue to modernize Pennsylvania's elections and guarantee that all voters have access to the ballot box. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Solway Ogamefin, the Executive Director of Pennsylvania Voice.
Good morning. First off, I want to thank Speaker McClinton for being here with us today and for introducing this historic legislation. I have dedicated my career to protecting and expanding the right to vote, so to be standing here today on the stage with the first woman to serve as Speaker of the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives, as she introduces a bill that will make it easier for all Pennsylvanians to make their voices heard at the ballot box, is a moment that I will remember for my entire life. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this incredible opportunity. My name is Shalawa Ogunmefin, and I get the pleasure of being the Executive Director at Pennsylvania Voice. We are a partnership of over 50 nonpartisan organizations, many of which are represented on this stage, thank you all so much, that are dedicated to increasing participation in our democracy, making it easier to vote, and making sure that every single person across the Commonwealth has the opportunity to participate in a truly multiracial democracy. I'm an immigrant from Lagos, Nigeria, and a proud voter from North Philadelphia. I purchased my first home in 2020, and I have voted in 4 general elections at that address since then. And each time I have needed to vote at a different polling location. In 2020, I was assigned to vote at a prior address's polling location. In 2021, I voted at a charter school. In 2022, I voted at a senior home up the street. In 2023, I voted at my neighborhood elementary school. Voters deserve to be able to vote in the most convenient way possible. With same day and early vote in place, I would have been able to update my voter registration in real time in 2020, allowing me to vote at the polling location that actually belonged to my address and allowing election administrators to update that information in real time. If we had early vote center access and 2 weeks of early vote, I would have had the stability of voting in the same location every election since 2020, yet I have not. These reforms will make it convenient for people to vote, increase voter participation, ease the burden on election directors, and allow for election results to be tabulated more quickly so that we can get election results as the general public as early as possible. Enabling voters to cast their ballots early at their familiar polling place on the same machines that they're used to using on Election Day is an important step towards ensuring that our elected officials truly reflect the will of the people to which they are meant to serve. Many of these voters have been voting the same way for years, and they may worry, as we have seen in real time, that if they vote by mail early from home, that there may be a technical error that prohibits that vote from being counted. These improvements will make it easier for working parents, folks that are serving as caregivers to loved ones, senior citizens, and those who require a wheelchair or a walker to cast their ballot easier and more conveniently. Instituting same-day voter registration at polling locations will also allow election officials to make real-time corrections, further enhancing the security of our election system. With more than 20 states, red and blue alike, allowing residents who are eligible to vote to register and cast a ballot on Election Day, we are clear that this is not about partisan politics. It's about the strength of our democracy and the freedom to actually vote. As Pennsylvania is where democracy started in the United States, we expect to be on the front lines of making it easier to vote of all these states across the country. A study that was conducted in 2020 of access to the ballot box in all 50 states ranked Pennsylvania 32nd between Florida and Louisiana, two states that had pre-clearance, 1965 Voting Rights Act pre-clearance put in place because they had historic rates of prohibiting people to vote. Act 77, which drastically expanded vote-by-mail options, was an important step towards creating a democracy that is truly reflective of the will of the people, but we cannot afford to rest on those past improvements to continue to take us into the next phase of our democracy in Pennsylvania. This legislation represents a monumental step towards further bolstering our democracy, the place where it was first conceived. And I, along with all of the folks on stage today and thousands of others across the Commonwealth, look forward to working with you, Madam Speaker, and the rest of your colleagues to pass these election improvements into law. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your advocacy, Shalawa, and thank you for all of the partner organizations. I know Committee of 70 is represented on this stage. I know the New Pennsylvania Project is here, and we've been joined by my colleagues, Representatives Malcolm Kenyatta, Tarek Khan, Christopher Rabb. Get everybody? Yes. And Philadelphia City Council President Kenyatta Johnson. Welcome. At this moment, I'm curious to know if any of the several members of the press that are present have any questions.
Have you touched base with counties? How are they supportive of this? Because I know we've heard, they're struggling a little bit running two elections on Election Day at once, both the mail-ins and then the in-person voting. What's their reaction to these proposals?
Yes, so the County Commissioners Association has been very clear. Similar to this type of measure, they want to make it easier for more people to participate, not harder. They don't want less people to participate. So in terms of voter registration, they want to make sure they have the time to gear up to do this, not like this November they'd be registering people, doing mail-in ballots, and having folks on election day saying, I'm casting my ballot for the first time and I registered 1 second ago. This would not take effect in us until about 2027, giving them plenty of time to gear up and have all the essentials necessary so they can properly administer elections.
And maybe just to that end, what would the staffing look like? What would the security of those places look like? And do you think Pennsylvania's all different municipalities and hundreds of different polling places can do this and make it a safe place to vote for places 2 weeks in advance at all of those different locations?
So we have a very beautifully diverse Commonwealth. Many times people think Pennsylvania is my hometown, Philly, and Pittsburgh, and that's the state. But of course, we know 2/3 of our state include beautiful rural communities. And we want to ensure that in every county, an early voting center is in fact accessible. During the pandemic, we saw every type of county step up. Some use their courthouses, some use their borough headquarters, some use their municipality headquarters to make sure folks knew how to get a mail-in ballot and where to safely return it. So although we are diverse in what our Pennsylvania looks like, both rural, urban, and suburban communities are eager to increase voter participation and turnout. And with the amount of money we've been investing in our elections, I'll look towards our commissioner here, Lisa Dealey. I gotta thank you for what we were able to accomplish 2 budgets ago, not last year, 2022, under our prior administration with Governor Wolf. We've been doing more in Harrisburg to make sure our county election officials have money so that they can safely and securely count every vote.
Madam Speaker, you're here at the press conference to bring in additional voting rights, same-day registration to improve, make it easier to vote. Just down the hall, I left the State Government Committee, chaired by Senator Dush, and they moved bills to make it harder to vote by drop box and restrictions on mail-in voting. Is there any way to get both chambers together to sit down in a room and to come to a conclusion that makes voting easier?
Absolutely, and that is the goal. You know, when we talk to neighbors back home and ask for the permission to be their voice in this state capitol, we come to this capitol with a mind to work together across the aisle and across the chambers. And in the Pennsylvania House, where we have what our leader calls a very humble 1-seat majority, so humble we don't use the H, it's humble. We are always willing to work with our counterparts, and I look forward this spring to sit down with Senator Dush to talk about how to make it easier for people to vote. Pennsylvania found ourselves in a really tough situation 4 years ago, where unfortunately so many of my colleagues participated in expanding the big lie, which led to a very deadly insurrection, one that we will never forget. We don't want to see those types of conspiracy theories happening, and we definitely don't want to make it harder. We want to make it easier for people to vote. As you heard from these advocates, people may have a language barrier, they may have accessibility challenges, and what can we do to modernize our elections to make sure that everyone feels this is where I live and my voice, my vote, they matter. Thank you all so very much for covering this. It's a busy day at the Capitol, and if the advocates have a moment, we'd like everyone to come closer so we could take a group picture. Thank you.